There are two things that can be genuine game changers for women in peri and post menopause, and half the internet either ignores it or gets it completely wrong. And today, we're going to break down the supplements that actually help, and we're talking about HRT because the fear around it is really based off of very misunderstood and old science.
I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm close to something real, somewhere I belong.
But as always, if you're new to the show, I'm Gavin Scribolito, a functional health coach helping women to stop fighting their bodies and start understanding them. And my mission is to make health, nutrition, training, and mindset seem simple and doable. I've helped over 200 women transform using our root method, addressing root causes so their body can finally respond and heal. Now, in episode 1 and 2, we covered the hormonal shifts and also the foundational steps. So your nutrition, your sleep, your training, and your stress management. But those are always going to move the needle forward the most. If those are not in control yet, this should not even be considered yet. But this episode is going to cover the two areas that generate, in my opinion, the most confusion and fear, which is supplements and HRT. Now, I want to be very clear. The goal here is just clarity. I am not pushing any sort of protocols on anybody, but I'm simply just giving you the information to have better conversations with your providers or your doctors, or just to make more informed decisions for yourself at the end of the day, because I do believe that gives you the power to actually make more informed choices for your body, for your health, for your goals, and help you to actually be able to make the progress that you're working so hard to be able to get. So let's start off with supplementation, because obviously I think that will come first and has a higher priority over HRT alone. And these are just some of the biggest movers that we use in practice. Supplements are going to obviously be here to support the foundation, but I want to be very clear, supplements do not replace the foundation. Okay, these can all be things that can help. And I think that the reason I want to talk about this the most is because a lot of what you see on social media is very inflated claims, very robust products that talk about these, crazy results that you're going to get. And I think that's one of the biggest red flags that can really be a telltale of like a product that is just scamming you, is if its claims sound too good to be true. Like as if one product is going to just reverse your entire metabolism to reboost it and revitalize you, and you're going to have all this energy. And that's 90% of what we see on social media, and they are playing off of the fact that you're desperate to try and see results. And obviously we live in a society that wants really quick fixes, and we want to see results now. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with the supplement industry. So we want to be very cautious of that. Best advice I can give you right now is that if you're looking at any supplements online and you see these really, really outlandish claims that it's going to completely reverse this thing, or it's going to completely revitalize this, or, like a gut detox drink, and it's like, going to drop 10 pounds and you're going to lose all this inflammation. Like, they look out for big buzzwords like that. Like, there's so much. I can make a whole podcast on just that alone. And honestly, I probably will. But right now, I want to go over the kind of not so fancy, not so sexy, but what actually works approach. And this is what we literally use in practice. Now, one of the first and most important ones to start off with here is going to be vitamin D3 and K2. Now, vitamin D3 is going to support immune function. It's going to support mood, insulin sensitivity, and it also supports thyroid function as well. This is typically very deficient in menopause. I think most people are honestly pretty deficient in vitamin D, but it's very prevalent in menopause, I do find, when I get labs done. Now, the reason we want to have K2 paired with this, and specifically in the form of MK7, is that this actually is what is going to direct calcium into your bone so it doesn't pile up in arterial walls, which is critical for cardiovascular health and safety when supplementing D3, because what D3 does is it also influences calcium. Okay, calcium is going to be absorbed into your bones, so that way your bones can be, strong, firm, and D3 plays a direct role in that. But what can happen is without K2, I want you to think of K2 as like, that guy in the runway with the lights that's directing the planes, right? Without him, we'd like, the plane wouldn't know which direction to go or where to go. I mean, maybe they would, but like, you get the point. K2 is what is directly influencing, like, helping calcium and vitamin D go into your bones. If not, it can pile up in your arterial walls and bloodstream. We can see calcification, which can be damaging. So we do want to make sure we have both of those paired together. So if you are looking into vitamin D or taking vitamin D, please do make sure that you also have K2 mixed with it. And there are products that have it combined in one. You don't always have to go and get it separately. But as far as dosages go, this is going to be very, very, very lab guided. Okay, I do not typically supplement with vitamin D unless I know where labs might be sitting. Doesn't mean you can't benefit from like lower dosages of it, but typically the ranges I find that are most effective are going to be around 5,000 IUs to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D with at least around 180 micrograms of K2 involved. Now, again, the reason I say this is lab guided is because if you have extremely low vitamin D levels, it could be beneficial to run a little bit of a higher dose for a period of time to get that into better ranges and then kind of drop back to a more of a maintenance dose. And that maintenance dose looks very different for everybody. So that's why I say lab guided, because typically one person could maintain great vitamin D status off of 2,000 to 3,000 IUs a day, whereas another person might need 5,000 to 7,000 IUs to maintain it. So we do want to make sure we are getting really clear on that. Now, number two, second most important one that I would feel is, going to be top tier here is going to be omega-3, specifically EPA and DHA. Okay, this is a potent anti-inflammatory fatty acid complex, and this is going to support brain health. It's going to support mood, cardiovascular function, inflammation, joint comfort, all things that are typically going to be under pressure in this phase. And as estrogen declines, your body actually becomes less efficient with its ability to convert alpha-linolenic acid in the form of ALA into DHA and EPA. And this is where direct EPA and DHA supplementation actually becomes even more important. And in a meta-analysis from Nature's Scientific Reports in 2019, actually showed that omega-3s were associated with significantly reduced triglycerides and also inflammatory markers like tumor necrosis factor alpha and also interleukin 6, which are two of the more notorious inflammatory markers across randomized control trials. And in another randomized control trial from 2020, we actually saw that 2 grams of fish oil per day significantly reduced HOMA-IR, which is an insulin resistance marker, and also fasting insulin versus placebo in adults. So we do actually see that it has metabolic benefits as well from this. So there is a lot of evidence that is very strong for supporting inflammation, insulin, and also cardiovascular health. And typically a dose to this, when you're looking at a product, this is again where like looking and understanding what you're buying is so important, because most people that I feel come to me that are on or taking omega-3s, they get their products from like food stores and like Nature's Bounty, Nature's Made. These are probably the most common supplements you'll find, and that's probably the most popular one that I see. But if you actually look at the EPA and DHA content, it'll say like, the bottle, like, 1,200 milligrams of fish oil or 2,000 milligrams of fish oil, but you look at the EPA and DHA content and it's like 200 to 300 milligrams of each, and it's just so underdosed to the point where you're just taking fish oils without having the actual benefits of the omega-3s coming in, so you're wasting your money. Now, what I typically want to look for is I'm looking for products that have as close to or even maybe above 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA each. So there are some typical products that I would typically be looking for. I think First Form has a really, really good product there where they get pretty close to that. A product that we personally carry at our store, it's a practitioner exclusive brand known as Nutridyne. They actually have a liquid form that is actually lemon flavored. It sounds gross because it's fish oil, but it actually tastes really good. It has like 1,400 milligrams of DHA and like 990 milligrams of EPA. So it's like super high dosed. That's what we want to be really looking for. Okay. So just something to be very cautious of when you're looking for supplementation like that. Now, next we have magnesium glycinate. Okay. This is one of the most depleted minerals under chronic stress, and it's also involved, it's a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. So it really plays a really big role in just overall, health function, especially the musculoskeletal system. So this is going to help play a role in supporting sleep. It's going to help with cortisol and nervous system regulation, and it also plays a role in insulin sensitivity. In a randomized control trial from 2025, magnesium glycinate actually significantly reduced the the insomnia severity score index, and in a 24-week trial with it, we actually saw that magnesium reduced 24-hour cortisol excretion as well from urinary samples. So we do see it play a really big role on regulating the nervous system, having a relaxation aspect to it. It is a muscle relaxer too, since it plays a big role in the musculoskeletal system. And typically, dosage for this is going to depend on the person. If I have someone who's going to be a little bit like higher anxiety throughout the day, maybe has a really go kind of job or life, I might space this out throughout the day. But it really depends on what sleep looks like. If sleep's really impaired, I would really recommend putting this full dose to before bed. But typically, I find that in practice, the best dose range is like around 300 to 400 milligrams at night before bed. So that is going to help support that sleep. It's going to help support relaxation, especially if you're noticing you're having trouble staying asleep. But if you find that maybe, sleep's not too bad, but throughout the day you're just really wired and you have a lot going on, could be worth looking into dosing it throughout the day and see how you feel. At the end of the day, it's always trial and error for what might work for one person, might not always work for the next. So you can always try different things. Now, creatine monohydrate. This is something that has so much controversy behind it. I feel like so many women are afraid of this one supplement because of its side effect of water retention. But I think that is also just extremely misunderstood. But for starters, beyond just the muscle aspect and the water retention side effects of creatine, which is meant to do, mind you, it also does support brain energy metabolism, supports cognitive function, mood, and also sleep, which can all obviously be impacted by estrogen decline. Creatine monohydrate is also the most studied, the most bioavailable form, and the most cost-effective form. Research in menopausal women actually consistently shows stronger strength gains when combined with resistance training. So one systematic review across 10 randomized controlled trials actually found significant improvements in both upper and lower body strength in women who supplemented with it for at least 24 weeks. And there's also growing evidence that is actually starting to support the cognitive benefits of it as well, because in 2025, a systematic review of over 1,500 participants actually found improvements in memory, attention, and processing speed. And we do have newer research also emerging in menopausal women specifically, which I'm really excited to eventually be able to dive into. Now, as far as the fear around this product goes, I think we have to understand the mechanism at play and how it actually works. And when you hear water retention, you start to get afraid of that because you don't want to get puffy. You kind of think of when you have too much sodium, your ring stays really tight to your finger. But at the end of the day, the role of water retention is going to be influenced by how much water you're consuming. So obviously this is why consuming enough water with it is so important. For every 5 grams that you take a day, you should be taking at least around 300 milliliters with it. And your water intake throughout the day should be pretty adequate. I find that for most women, getting a minimum of 64 ounces a day, depending on activity. If you have a higher activity level, you're working out more, obviously that might go up a little bit more. But if you are consuming adequate amounts of water, what we're typically going to actually see from this is intracellular water retention, which means that your body has intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. Extracellular is like when you have too much salt and you feel like your ring's tight. Intracellular is actually what is hydrating your cells, specifically your muscle cells, which we want. That is a good thing. We want your body to be hydrated. So that water retention aspect is also what is going to help with getting more creatine to your muscles. It's going to help with also shuttling more glucose, more nutrients to your muscles. And the more hydrated your muscles are, the more fuller they're also going to look. That doesn't mean you look bulky, but it can lead to obviously, you looking like you're a little bit stronger, more fit. That can lead to more endurance, more strength benefits. There's a lot of mechanisms at play there to see those benefits. But then again, we do also have that side of things where we can see cognitive benefits. Typically 5 grams a day is the dose to be able to see the energy, the strength, the endurance benefits, and also the possibly supporting better recovery and muscle building. And then at 10 grams is typically where we actually will see a little bit more of the cognitive benefit side of things. So obviously that would require you to make sure you are getting even more adequate water intake. So depends on the person, but this is one of those things that I do consider a very big staple for a lot of women in peri and postmenopause that we work with. Now, some honorable mentions that I want to bring up here is going to be CoQ10 or coenzyme 10, and then we also have glycine. Okay, CoQ10 is going to specifically support mitochondrial function, which plays a really big role in energy production, and this declines with age, and it especially declines or gets affected by statin drug use, which I feel like a lot of women, that are a little bit older, are typically on. And in a meta-analysis of 13 randomized control trials, consisting of over 1,000 participants, we actually saw that CoQ10 significantly reduced fatigue. Now, the dose here is also going to be very dependent. Typically, the starting dose is 100 to 200 milligrams to see the benefits, although there is some research that actually supports higher dosages of 300 to 400 milligrams to actually reduce or alleviate migraines and also reduce inflammation. So we can see kind of a multifactorial approach there where we can see it kind of attack multiple scenarios. But the main thing that can help with, that I have seen it work the most efficiently with in practice, is its role in actually supporting better energy metabolism, which can also help support better thyroid regulation. Obviously that can support your mitochondria is literally, if you can remember like high school biology, is literally what supports your, if you want to think of like what your metabolism is, that's such a big key role in it. It's probably one of the biggest roles in it, is like literally cellular energy production. Your mitochondria are literally what convert energy substrates like glucose and fatty acids into ATP, which is what your body runs on entirely. So without mitochondria, you don't really have any energy production. So CoQ10 can really support at the foundational level of supporting better mitochondria. Now we also have glycine, which is actually a calming amino acid. This is actually going to support sleep quality, can also help with strengthening your gut lining integrity, and it plays a role in collagen synthesis. 3 grams of glycine 30 minutes before bed has actually shown to improve significantly sleep quality and the ability to actually fall asleep quicker. And this is due to its mechanism at play where it actually lowers your body temperature. Without that, you obviously have a harder time falling asleep. I'm sure, if you have hot flashes or you just have, you're just not really comfortable going to bed, you will typically see that, you're having a harder time falling asleep, or you just toss and turn a lot more. And it's also actually increases serotonin levels without increasing dopamine. And that is going to help to normalize your circadian rhythm and also melatonin synthesis. So those are just a few of the most powerful ones that I've seen in practice. Some different supplementation might, depend on like the certain case scenario. If there's any sort of, issues in thyroid function, that might require some different approaches. But typically, if we're talking about just things alone that can really support the foundation here of like, muscle loss, bone loss, sleep struggles, energy, and fatigue, this is going to be that foundation, including, even things like insulin sensitivity, inflammation, so on and so forth. So that is a foundation. Outside of that, it would be much more nuanced, but like specific pinpointed supplementation. But as you can see, nothing there was like super fancy. Nothing there was like, this detox or this cortisol thing. It's like, these are actual foundational supports here. That's what we want to start with. Now, let's set the record straight with HRT. And this is not medical advice by any means. I want to be very clear on that. This is just an evidence-based breakdown of what the research actually says to help you actually have more informed conversations with your provider. Okay. Now, where did all of this fear around HRT actually come from? Well, in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative study made global headlines and said hormone therapy causes breast cancer, heart attacks, and strokes. And millions of women stopped HRT right there. And the problem with this study, well, there's multiple problems with this study that wasn't acknowledged and addressed. First one is that the average participants of this study were at the age of around 63 years old, which is more than 10 years older than the average menopause onset age of 51. And only 3 to 5% of the women in the Women's Health Initiative study actually were around the age of 50 to 54. Now, we also have the next problem, which is the actual form of the drug used. And that hormone used was actually oral conjugated equine estrogen, which is derived from horse urine. And it was combined with synthetic progestin, medroxyprogesterone acetate. Okay, these are not bioidentical hormones. And the oral delivery of these hormones carries risks that other forms do not, especially that we see in newer research. And the study was testing HRT to actually see its impacts on disease prevention in older women. It was not used as symptom management for early menopause. And when we look at the actual absolute risk numbers, they tell a much different story. So the 26% increased breast cancer risk that it claimed was actually a relative risk. And when we look at the absolute increase, it was only approximately 8 additional cases per 10,000 women each year, which is pretty insignificant. But the subgroup analysis of the women that were aged 50 to 59 in this study, so earlier postmenopause, not late menopause, they showed no significant increase in any adverse cardiovascular events. So the bottom line is that the fear around HRT was built on the wrong drug, the wrong delivery method, and the wrong population. Now, we do have different forms of HRT. It is not just this one form, okay? We have transdermal HRT, and this is going to beat oral in every way, shape, or form. Oral estrogen has to undergo first pass liver metabolism, and this is going to raise clotting factors, triglycerides, inflammation markers like CRP, and also can raise blood pressure. But transdermal estradiol bypasses the liver and is actually delivering estrogen directly into circulation without any downstream metabolic effects. And a really big key distinction here is what is known as venous thromboembolism, or VTE, which is a blood clot risk. Oral HRT increased VTE risk. Transdermal HRT in research showed statistically no increased VTE risk, and the conjugated equine estrogen and medroxyprogesterone acetate, which is the combination of the Women's Health Initiative study, actually had the highest VTE risk of all combinations. So the form matters. Transdermal estradiol in the form of a patch, gel, or cream is clinically preferred instead of the typical conjugated equine estrogen route, which we clearly see in research has poor health outcomes. Now, as far as progesterone goes, we have to understand that women need progesterone alongside estrogen, but not all progesterones are made equal. We have synthetic progestins like the medroxyprogesterone acetate, or MPA, and then we have oral micronized progesterone, which is bioidentical. It literally is matching the same molecular structure as progesterone in your body, or you can call this OMP. Now, in a systematic review and meta-analysis that was done in 2016, we actually saw that OMP was associated with lower breast cancer risk compared to synthetic progestins like the MPA that was used in the Women's Health Initiative study. And OMP also is what is going to help support sleep and mood. So some of the bonus benefits of that is that progesterone enhances GABA activity, which is a neurotransmitter, and it's your calming neurotransmitter. Also plays a role in signaling downstream to melatonin synthesis, but it also can be very sleep promoting and relaxing. So this is why they say that progesterone is your calming hormone, because it does act on that GABA activity. And in another randomized control trial done on actually approximately 200 perimenopausal women that all were taking around 300 milligrams of oral mechanized progesterone for 3 months, significantly improved night sweats and also sleep quality. Now, that doesn't mean to go and get that dosage. The dose that is typically recommended is titrated up depending on how you feel. So, there is certain ranges they start at and they kind of build up from there with, in practice. But that does go to show that, clearly in research, we see that actually have really positive outcomes. And in another systematic review of randomized controlled trials done in 2021, we saw that micronized progesterone actually improved multiple sleep outcomes in postmenopausal women. So we do see this playing a really big role in sleep, which is obviously under a lot of pressure and is one of the most common impacted lifestyle factors of going through menopause. And that alone can help with managing stress, helping manage insulin sensitivity, so on and so forth. So we see a lot in research, and I think there was another study that actually had shown that the equivalent risk factor of taking transdermal estrogen and also oral mechanized progesterone was the equivalent of drinking 1 glass of wine a week. And from statistics, we actually see that women are drinking way more than that. So you have more of a risk factor for cancer and other health issues from drinking wine than you do from actually taking bioidentical hormonal replacement therapy, right? So as far as progesterone goes, always want to make sure we're taking that at night. But again, this is just a conversation to have with your provider. Make sure that you are advocating for the right forms for yourself. Now, as far as testosterone, that is going to be one of those things that is 100% going to be lab guided. Okay. This can significantly decline with age as well throughout perimenopause. And sometimes it actually declines before estrogen and progesterone even does, depending on the situation. But this has to be lab guided. You shouldn't just be considering testosterone replacement therapy without looking at labs first, because if you do not have low testosterone, then this can cause some complications if you just start taking testosterone. But some things you can typically look out for is going to be persistent fatigue. We can see low libido, brain fog, poor motivation, or a harder time building muscle as well. And a lot of the benefits that are supported in research from taking testosterone replacement therapy is improved libido and sexual function, which is probably the strongest research or evidence, energy, cognitive function, clarity, mental muscle maintenance, and also improved mood. Now, very similarly to estrogen, we have a preferred form over what sometimes we have seen in research. And there's three forms. It's going to be, you have cream, gel, or you have pellets. There's obviously, you have intramuscular injections as well, but I don't think anybody really wants to be injecting themselves. So typically I am recommending a cream or gel. Now, the reason that is because yes, although pellet therapy is very common and very popular right now, it does show greater symptom relief in some studies, but the inability to adjust that dose is a really meaningful limitation, because when you get pellets surgically implanted into you, if it is overdosed, it cannot be adjusted over the course of 3 to 6 months until it dissolves. Another big problem with this is that as it dissolves, the dose becomes less potent. So what we see is this wave of increased testosterone, and then it starts to drop off, and then you have low testosterone side effects again before you get your next pellet, surgically implanted, and then it's back up, and then it drops back down again. So it's not consistent dosaging. Whereas if we have a cream or a gel, it allows for us to actually have some dose adjustability, and it also allows for you to dose it much more stably where your levels remain the same, which is what we ideally want. We don't want this roller coaster with it. But if side effects do emerge, like acne or hair growth, the dose can be adjusted immediately, as opposed to you kind of being stuck with something you just got implanted into your body. Now, no matter what this goes to show is that always work with a provider who is specialized in female physiology, and advocate for yourself to get the form that you feel most comfortable with. But all in all, what this all goes to show is that these supplements, and when appropriate, HRT, they are the final tier support, okay? They do not override the actual foundations that are put in place. But if your body does still need a little bit of some extra support, that's why these tools exist. And the science is there to back them. It's not fancy, it's not sexy, it's not flashy like everything you see on social media, but it works. And that's what we need to take into account, is that what is working so you get the best bang for your buck and the best outcome for yourself. And the conversation around HRT has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. And women nearing or in the middle of menopause deserve to have that conversation with accurate information and research, not really old, outdated headlines. Okay, and that's what this series was really built to do, for you to have the knowledge and the information to make the most educated choice for yourself and ask the right questions so you can get what your body actually needs. Now, as always, if this episode helped you understand perimenopause and menopause in a more practical way, be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. And please share this episode on your social media so it helps more women to find the show. It's also very helpful if you leave a quick rating and a short review with your biggest takeaway. And as always, feel free to message me on Instagram and tell me what topic you want me to break down next. Resources and next steps are in the description below. You are built for better. I will see you on the next one.